Petrol heads all over the world feared this day. The day that V8s got dropped and electric AMGs became a reality. It's hardly the manufacturer's fault, as EU emissions regulations force them to develop cars like this to still try and keep AMG fun. For me personally, AMG has always been about V8s. It's been about tire smoke, exhaust notes, that raucousness and chaos when you hit your foot to the ground. But can this new electric AMG substitute all of that feeling? Has Mercedes done enough to still fill that gap within every single driver that yearns for that raw AMG experience? The EQE 43 AMG is powered by a 90 kilowatt-hour lithium battery. It produces 350 kilowatts and 858 newton meters of torque. Now, believe it or not, my E63, produces 367 kilowatts of power, so it's actually beating this new electric car on power. However, the electric car has 4MATIC. Its center of gravity is also lower to the floor, so that makes it a lot more agile. But what happens when you drag race them? That electric EQE next to me, I know I'm gonna lose, but the question is, by how much am I going to lose?
My job today, not very difficult, I'm not gonna lie. With the four-wheel drive and the instant power here, he really doesn't stand a chance, but he still wanted to try. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
And unsurprisingly, the EQE absolutely nailed the 63, despite the weight and power deficit. But AMGs have never been drag race heroes, so we need to take our testing further.
One of the defining characteristics of an AMG is how well it goes sideways. It is the very brutal nature that these cars are built upon, and the question is, does this new electric AMG have the balls to even do it? I've never drifted an electric car before, nor have I ever tried to drift an electric car. Is it going to go sideways is the question. I don't know if it is going to go sideways. Whoa! What? What? It goes sideways! What? I did not expect that. Oh my word! So now we sit at the pivotal turning point where AMG has gone electric, and the question on every single petrolhead's tongue, is this thing still deserving of an AMG badge at the back? And the answer is yes and no. Although this car is electric, Mercedes have tried their absolute utmost to still include some form of emotion within the vehicle. I like to call it digital emotion. And it starts with these driver mode toggles here by the steering wheel, because this is freaking cool to flick through. And although it did feature on the combustion engine AMGs from before, it's still really cool to have here. When I flick it into sport, I get a sound. Listen, spaceshipy. Of course, what else did you expect? When I flick it into Sport Plus, I get a different sound. Listen, spaceshipy. Again, what else did you expect? And that brings me on to a point that I'd like to raise with this vehicle. You see, because this car is electric, it means that it always has instant accessibility to its power. So I put my foot down and I have 350 kilowatts and over 850 newton meters of torque, like that, every single damn time. When I drive my V8 E63 AMG and I want to put my foot down, I'm looking ahead of the road because I need space. If I want to open up that engine and actually really enjoy it and even get to a gear change, I need so much space to let that engine just like stretch its legs. Whereas with this, it's always there. And then you take into account that the center of gravity is extremely low on this car because all the batteries are placed on the floorboard. So yes, the car weighs over 2.5 tons, but when you take into account the fact that it has instant accessibility of its power, the center of gravity is low, you start pushing it around corners and you get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, this car grips in absolute obscene amount. So then it becomes a question of, is this an AMG or is it just a really fast electric car that makes noises? And that's where I'm getting stuck with this car, to be honest with you. Yes, it goes sideways, and that is very AMG-esque. If you wanted to get sideways in an urban environment, in a day-to-day setting, when you're actually driving the car, you really need to push the car, because yes, it is rear wheel bias, but by the time you get the car to its limits of grip, you're going way too fast to be having any sort of fun. And that's the thing with this car. It's so ludicrously quick, so easy to extrapolate that performance out of it, that it's like old AMGs, you sit with the feeling of, I'm driving this car and I'm gonna put my foot down and I might die. And that's what made all of the old AMGs fun. You know, you're sitting at a junction, you're like, I could just turn the wheel, put my foot down and go sideways. In this, it's not really a feeling of, I'm gonna put my foot down and go sideways, because of the weight. The weight inherently hinders driver confidence in the car. And that's something that electric cars, it's a problem that electric cars are going to face up until such point that they can make them lighter. And I mean, guys, let's face it, electric cars aren't going to become lighter anytime soon. Batteries weigh a lot, and that's just a point of reality that we're going to have to face. So now I sit at the conclusion of this car, the pivotal conclusion, where I tell you guys it's not really an AMG. And I think that's sad. I think that's really sad for me. The thing is, what you have to keep in mind here, for a new generation of people, like our children and our grandchildren, are likely never ever going to experience a V8. So for them, the frame of reference is never going to be there. When they hop into an electric car, it's going to be, okay, cool, this is the EQE 350 and it's a slower version of the EQE 43 AMG, and you are most definitely going to feel that this car is more stiffly sprung and therefore inherently more sporty. But it's not, and it's never going to be to that like rawness factor and that raw scale of tire shredding nonsense that AMGs are so known for. And yes, the car is impressive. Yes, the car is fast. Yes, the car is always accessible. Yes, it corners with an absolutely unfathomable amount of grip. And as a performance car, it's there. But you've never really, you know, spoken of AMGs and started off a review by saying electric cars are serene. Because look now, I'm cruising in comfort. There's no noise. The drag coefficient of this EQE is phenomenal because it's been designed in such a way that it's so slippery. So there's no wind noise. This car is peaceful to drive. And then when I put it into Sport Plus, it can just like rip the face off of anything. And then there's the price. Because this car is 2.2 million rand. And do you know what else is 2.2 thereabout million rand? Is the BMW M5 competition and the Audi RS7. And I know all the petrol heads right now are saying, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to take the M5 and the RS7. Obviously you will. But when you think about the kind of buyer that wants this electric experience, this new age of technology, this instant accessibility, this is an electric performance car that is they're about the same price as its combustion engine alternatives. And I think that is freaking cool. Not to say that this car would run away from an M5 or an RS7, it probably wouldn't at top end, but in an urban environment, when you stab that accelerator pedal, nothing, unless it's another electric car, will keep up with this. And that's just a fact. So I say to the new age of performance cars, the new electric cars, they're cool, but they are not the rawness and the driver involvement that we've come to love from AMG vehicles. And I find that quite sad. And I do feel like these kinds of cars can exist in an environment where, you know, the owner has this AMG, electric AMG, and they've also got a V8 combustion engine AMG. Someone who drives an electric car most likely would also have a combustion engine car in their fleet. So yes, the car has a place where it exists, and no, it's not as cool as combustion engine AMGs, and that is just the fact of the matter. AMG for me has always been about this. This is AMG. That is tire shredding, fire breathing fucking nonsense. And I love it.